אוקיי.
חשבתי שכבר תגמור עכשיו.
כן, אני גם חשבתי לסיים. אנחנו גם... Where's Ruben? Where did Ruben go?
לא אכלתי, אני צריך ללכת הביתה לביצים.
Oh, there you are.
I am. Here I am.
Okay. I just wrote to someone starting now.
I was wondering
About the
what
stringentness.
I guess you're looking for something between stringency and restriction.
Stringency, you say? I looked online. It's a
Strictness.
rigidness. Yeah, there's a few words that could fit. So the story: this guy has a parrot, and he goes back to the seller, and he says, "I can't handle my parrot. It's always saying bad words. I wish you die. I hope you burn in hell. You know, it's bad parrots, it's bad words." So he comes to the seller. He says, "I can't handle this parrot. Take it back." So the parrot says, "I have a better idea for you." The guy says, "I have a better idea." He says, "We have a parrot here who just came back from the rabbi's house. The rabbi wanted to entertain his kids, so they had a parrot. Now they're all grown, so he brought back the parrot. Doesn't need it anymore. So this parrot always says, 'Amen, so it be,' and so on. Always these wishes. So he says, with a good parrot, put them together with the bad parrot, and then the good parrot would influence the bad one, so he won't say bad words." So he comes back 2 weeks later, and he says it became even worse. The bad parrot, I said, "I wish you'll die," and the rabbi's parrot says, "Amen. I wish you'll burn. Amen." So now it became even worse. These days of counting of the Omer are the days where we take 49 steps to self-refinement. This is a well-known thing with regards to the counting of the Omer, and the reason behind counting the Omer is because when the Jews were in Egypt, they were sunk in 49 gates of impurity, and in order to prepare themselves to receive the Torah from God on Mount Sinai, they had to clean and rectify themselves in a way that would render them adequate to receive the Torah from God. Hold on, I'll turn on this air conditioner if you don't mind. So in the days of the counting of the Omer, we learned Tractate Avot. We're starting to do that in the coming Shabbos, and today we're going to discuss a bit about Tractate Avot, and most importantly, the eternal discussion or argument between Beit Shamai and Beit Hillel, which is considered to be in the classic Talmud the two biggest scholars that would differentiate over various and many items in Jewish law. And today we'll try to look into a bit what led to their argument and how we should, what could we learn from it. So this is when we learn the Tractate of Avot, and it's a famous quote: "It's not the knowledge you acquire, it's what you do with that knowledge." It's obviously Tractate Avot, besides the wisdom it has, it also has a lot of ways to educate us and to explain to us what needs to be done. But the question is, why now? Traditionally, we study Tractate Avot between Passover and Shavuot. So Medrash Shmuel says the following. He says, "Why do we read Tractate Avot between Passover and Shavuot? I found written," it says, "since the weather becomes warmer and a person's desires are aroused. This tractate is filled with precautions and instructions that assist the person in his or her pursuit of good attributes. I found again another reason, since on Shavuot the Torah was given and a person should learn how to conduct his or her behavior prior to receiving the Torah." So Medrash Shmuel says it's the weather. It becomes warm, and unfortunately when it's hot, people peel away some of their layers and might walk in a way that's not modest. And generally speaking, summertime associates with freedom. Winter, summer vacation, kids are out of school. A lot of the offices are maybe 70 or 80% in their production. A lot of people are traveling abroad. Summer feels like a vacation.
Might suggest another reason.
Please?
In Shavuot, the Torah was given. Of course, there are some people who have doubts Torah versus written Torah.
Mm-hmm.
The very first Mishnah on Avot is clear that the oral law has the same origin.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't think of that one. Yeah, it does make a lot of sense what you just said.
The oral tradition and the written are the same origin.
Yeah, that's what Mishnah in Avot. Reuben is absolutely right. That's what the first Mishnah says. Moshe Kibbutz Torah Sinai. The first Mishnah of Mishnah, it has 6 chapters. The first Mishnah of the first paragraph of the first chapter speaks about the origin of the oral Torah. It is interesting. What?
Is that Midrash?
No, it's Mishnah. Pirkei Avot is Mishnah. It's not Midrash. This explains why is it traditionally taught between Passover and Shavuot, although according to our customs and a few other communities in the Jewish world, we say it throughout the summer, and then also after Shavuot, we say it all the way to Rosh Hashanah. We'll still learn Pirkei Avot every Shabbat. And this mainly refers to the first explanation, which is the vacation time.
That said, the explanation in this Midrash Shmuel fits better the country of the Omer.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the second explanation, as you say, correlates with the counting of the Omer. The first explanation, when the weather becomes warmer and person desires are aroused, that actually is applicable throughout the whole summer, and that explains why the minhag is to say it throughout the summer. So we'll look into, the first chapter, and look at one of the Mishnayot that was chosen, 16. Shamai would say, Aseh Toratcha keva, emor me'at ve'aseh arbeh. Make your Torah study a permanent fixture of your life. Say little and do much, and receive every man with a pleasant countenance. Maimonides, on his explanation, what is pleasant countenance? A person's negotiations with other should be pleasant and positive. So, interesting, keep in mind who said this, Shamai. And we're going to read a bit about...
maybe Shamai is not such
stringent.
The super strict that some people imagine.
We'll soon put this Mishnah. Shamai, Hillel, they both lived at the same time, the time of the Mishnah, which is, what is it, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi?
Early, you remember we said that Hillel said
right.
of the temple.
Correct.
Much earlier than Yehuda Nasi.
Right, much earlier than Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. So we're talking, 2000, how many years ago we're talking now? The temple was destroyed 4,000, no, it was built 4004. We're now 5, right? No, Gimel Alefim, Tav Dalet, 3,404. That's when the temple was built.
It's
So
after the fall of, after the downfall of the Maccabean kingdom. I think Hillel is already from Roman times.
So that takes us how many years back? Approximately
2000, maybe a little more.
Uh-huh.
So Shamai and Maimonides were two.
No, Maimonides is 850 years ago.
Probably one of the, if not the first one of first generations to call themselves that other people call Pharisees. And maybe call themselves that way. That's a point of clear.
Okay, fine. So anyway, keep that in mind. Shammai says, look, take everyone with a pleasant approach, and let's put that a little bit to test and see some stories that took place with Shammai, a famous Talmud. Everybody who goes to any Torah institution would learn this Mishnah, this Gemara in Tractate Shabbat. The sages taught there was an incident involving one Gentile who came before Shammai. The Gentile said to Shammai, how many Torahs do you have? He said to him, 2. The written Torah and the oral Torah. The Gentile said to him, with regards to the written Torah, I believe you. But with regards to the oral Torah, I do not believe you. Convert me on condition that you will teach me only the written Torah. Shammai scolded him and cast him out with reprimand. The same Gentile came before Hillel who converted him and began teaching him the Torah. On the first day he showed him the letters of the alphabet and said to him, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. The next day he reversed the order of the letters and told him that Aleph is Tav, and so on. The convert said to him, but yesterday you did not tell me that. Hillel said to him, you see that it is impossible to learn what is written without relying on the oral tradition. Didn't you rely on me? Therefore you should also rely on me with regards to the matter of the oral Torah, and accept the interpretations that it contains. So Hillel put a trick on this fellow, which seemed to be quite of a smarty pants. He came to Shamai. He said, he's putting conditions. Shamai did not have the willing and the patience to deal with.
That in a reasonable condition can be rejected. And here it was a condition on the face of it goes against principles.
Completely. And yet Hillel found a way to find a path to this person, to this individual. He did help him, and then he made him understand and realize his own mistake. Let's look at story number 2. This is the most famous one. There was another incident involving one Gentile who came before Shamai and said to Shamai, convert me on the condition you teach me the entire Torah while I'm standing on one foot. Shamai pushed him away with a builder's cubit in his hand. This is a common measuring stick, and Shamai was a builder by trade. This is the non-emphasized words are the interpretation. The same Gentile came before Hillel. He converted him and said to him, that which is hateful to you, do not do to others. That is the entire Torah. The rest is its interpretation. Go study. We'll soon analyze this story a bit and try to realize what did Hillel had to tell him. Why is this the most important thing, and how could he agree to such a precondition, teaching the whole Torah while standing on one foot?
How to infer from Hillel's statement the rules between man and another man? I can understand, because you can probably. But how to infer from that the rules that involve a Shamai? Sounds hard.
Yeah, we'll soon analyze it. Actually, the Rebbe touches upon it in chapter 32 in Tanya. And let's look story number 3. There was another incident involving one Gentile who was passing behind the study hall and heard the voice of a teacher who was teaching Torah to his students, saying the verse, and these are the garments which they shall make, a breastplate and an ephod, a robe and a tunic of checkered work. What is it? A meter and a grid, whatever. All these special garments that are reserved for the high priest. The Gentile said, these garments, from whom are they designated? The student said to him, for the high priest. The Gentile said to himself, I will go and convert, so they will install me as a high priest. He came before Shamai and said to him, convert me on the condition you install me as a high priest. Shamai pushed him with the builder's cubit in his hand. He came before Hillel. He converted him. He helped him. And let's look at what proceeded. This is the continuation of the story. Hillel said to him, to the convert, is it not the way of the world that only one who knows the protocols of royalty is appointed king? Go and learn the royal protocols by engaging in Torah study. He went and read the Bible. When he reached the verse which says, and the common man that draws near shall be put to death, the convert said to Hillel, with regards to whom is the verse speaking? Hillel said to him, even with regards to David, king of Israel. The convert responded with a fortiori inference himself. If the Jewish people are called God's children, and due to the love that God loved them, he called them Israel, my son, my firstborn. And nevertheless it is written about them, and the common man that draws near shall be put to death. A mere convert who came without merit, with nothing more than his staff and traveling bag, all the more so that this applies to him as well. So instead of Hillel arguing with the guy that is completely unreasonable, I want to be Jewish and I want to become the high priest, Hillel said, okay, before being high priest, go study what it means. And when he studied, he realized himself that he's already disqualified to be a high priest. So, in fact, Hillel's approach. And look what the Talmud is telling us. The Gemara relates, eventually the 3 converts gathered together in one place, and they said, Shammai's impatience sought to drive us from the world. Hillel's patience brought us beneath the wings of the divine presence. And after all that, we can ask, Shamai is the one who said earlier, make sure to be pleasant to everyone. These 3 stories show us quite the contrary of Shammai's approach towards people. Now, before continuing on, I must say what Ruben touched upon earlier, which is when somebody comes to become Jewish, or somebody comes to services, or somebody comes, they need something from the rabbi, setting up conditions is not the way if you want to be helped, right? Imagine you go into a place and somebody says, you need help, and you say, okay, I'm going to agree to get your help only if A, B, and C will be matched by my criteria. Obviously, that's not a way to start even a conversation, let alone engage yourself in a religious study or religious faith. So on its face, Shammai was absolutely correct, pushing off these individuals. They all came with conditions that were completely out of the world. And yet Hillel was able to find a way to bring these people in. And that's what we want to try and look into. Now, what really was going on? Shamai's rigidness. Shamai was a rigorous and a very stringent guy. And we know the Torah is telling us, the Talmud is telling us about different things Shammai was doing. For instance, the fact that on Shabbat, Shammai would do every day of the week when he was in the market, he would go out and he would find something he would designate it for Shabbat. So the whole week around, he was preparing for Shabbat. Another thing it says about the time that his daughter-in-law gave birth on Sukkot, V'Shamai pichetet ha'maziva. There was a little baby, a few days of age, and Shammai had took down some of the ceiling and put schach in order for the baby and his mother to be under the sukkah. Although they were in the house, but Shammai made an arrangement because he said even a little baby who was just a few days of age is also worthy to sit in a sukkah. Or in case of a wedding, it says there's a story, there's a discussion between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai with regards to if somebody walks into a wedding and then according to Beit Hillel, you should say Kala na'ava chasuda, that the bride is beautiful even if she's not. But Shammai says Kalak voce, which means the bride as she is. You don't have to make up all kinds of words of praise when they're out of place. So how does that come together? How does this reconcile with Shammai's approach on people and with what he said about being pleasant and being good to people? So let's look a little bit about the story that's the most quoted with regards to this incident. What is about what Hillel said to this guy, and he said, what you don't like, don't do to others. And that's basically the whole Torah. And like Reuben was asking, this might include the mitzvahs, the commandments between man and another man, but what about all the other commandments between man and God? So this is what there's a book called Sama de Chaye. It was written by Eliezer Lev. This was from Hungary, and about 200 years ago he lived. And he says as follows: when talking about a person who is serious in his intention to become Jewish, what is there for such nonsense of studying the whole Torah while standing on one foot? Like, where does it even start? Rather, his intention was to study and fulfill the whole Torah in one lifetime, without the need of reincarnation. This explains Hillel's reply, love your fellow as yourself, since the love would help join everyone else's good deeds, and this would mean all the merits are shared with everyone. So he proposes a very interesting explanation to this incident, and he says our fellow wasn't an idiot. The guy who came to convert, he actually was well learned, and he knew what he was talking about. And he says, I want to find a way to be Jewish, and for my soul not to have to come back to this world again because it was lacking things. As we know, nobody's perfect, and all our souls in this generation specifically, but even in the previous generations, are souls of people who are already in this world, and the reason why we are in this world is to correct our wrongdoings, their wrongdoings, and to refine whatever wasn't enough to refine. We didn't have enough time or opportunities, and that's why our souls are back in our bodies in this generation and also in the previous generations. This fellow learned that and knew that, and he came to Hillel and he asked him, I want to learn the whole Torah on one foot, which means I want to make it all on one lifetime. In one shot, I want to make it all work. And Hillel, instead of pushing him back, which is the reasonable thing to do, is to push this person back because he doesn't know how, I cannot do that. You want to do that? Shammai or Hillel would say, even my soul has to come here again. Would you want to be exempt? But instead of that, Hillel gave him a formula. He said, love your fellow as yourself. In other words, unite your efforts with other people's efforts. And that might help for everything to be shared amongst everyone. And also, let me just end. And the ending of Hillel's response was, go study, which would enable you to fulfill all the mitzvot. He said, this is the whole Torah. The rest of it, go study. Go study, it means that sometimes by learning about something, you could fulfill it just by the learning of it. In most cases, you have to do it. But let's just say we have what the Mishnah says, Kol ha'osek b'Torah tolah ki'ilu ekriv olah. If somebody learns the rules of the offerings, nowadays we don't have a temple, we can't offer offerings to God. But by learning these rules, engaging in those rules, it is considered as if we were bringing those offerings to Hashem. You wanted to say something?
Now I see why Hillel said the rest is commentary. He didn't say the rest is deduction.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Correct. That's exactly what he said. And then what your question is answered elsewhere. I didn't bring that here with the Tanya, the chapter 32, where he says that indeed this apparently only touches the mitzvot, commandments between man and man, but the actual outcome of Torah study and the connection we have with God, how does that reflect? It reflects when we turn to another person. So basically, all the mitzvot, all the commandments, all the positive and negative commandments with regards to our relationship with God manifests and comes out with our relationship with someone else. So that's why, but it's brought at length, and I'll be happy to study it with you a little later from Tanya of how it does that. So if this is the case, so what really made Shamai push this individual forward and not accept him? And the Rebbe brings a very interesting explanation that this is just a quote from Tractate Avot, a random quote. And if you could look on Mishnah 12, Mishnah 15, first Hillel is brought and then Shammai is brought. But throughout the whole Talmud, whenever there's a discussion between Hillel and Shammai, Shammai's opinion is always brought first, and only then Hillel's opinion is brought. Whereas in Tractate Avot, it's the other way around. Hillel is the first and Shammai is the second. And the reason why is it so? It says that Shammai came from the attribute of discipline, and Hillel comes from the attribute of kindness, of loving kindness. And what happens is, when the Mishnah was composed, and of course when the Talmud was also composed, but let's put just the Mishnah in that. So, as if Hillel, because they were so loving kindness, they had such chesed, attribute chesed, they always said, don't put us first, we're okay to be second. So Shammai's rigidness and rigorous was the first one, and then Hillel. But in Pirkei Avot, it actually changed, because now Shammai understood what Hillel says. In other words, Shammai agreed to what Hillel says. The same Shammai who says, you should accept everyone with a pleasant face. Basically now, we said, how could you call that pleasant? We see what Shammai is about. Yeah, these stories were before Pirkei Avot. Pirkei Avot, actually Shammai was listening to what Hillel said, and he followed. And he realized that this is the way to go. Shammai was not a nasty person or a bad person, heavens forbid. And Hillel was not a hippie as well. Obviously, they both had a very specific line of thought and line of action. And Shammai realized that we cannot tolerate different things. We have to abide by the rules. We have to adhere to the Torah rules. We need to do things as they are. Whereas Hillel was looking into how incorporating, not changing any of the rules, but how to incorporate the individual to the rule. In other words, none of them were reform or conservative or any of that sort, in which their approach is to change the rules. None of them were about changing the rules. It was about how to make the people understand, accept, fulfill, and be connected with the rules. Not removing the rules, but how to make the people be part of the rules, or how do they accept the rules. So this is important to stress, not to...
I think they bring Shammai first, and in order to bring Hillel second. What I mean, because people see, this is a lot more restrictions. Then we say, oh no, come Hillel, and we say, okay, actually we're not so restricted. Give you one thing, just give you a better feeling maybe, and the other to show that the Torah itself is not like there are ways to do things.
Very interesting.
What Ezra is going to say applies to the many cases where the discussion is about specific halachot, specific ways of behavior, defining the rules precisely. But here we are not so much defining the rules of behavior, the halachot, as defining the proper attitude.
I agree. Yeah, defining the attitude more than the rules, right? So this is what Pirkei Avot is about. There's a story, we don't know it's true or not, but everybody tells that story about Thomas Edison. And when his mother died, he told the story. Again, we don't know if it's true. It happened so long ago, so nobody could. These stories float all over the internet. Anyway, it's a nice story, even if it's false, which probably is false. So, Thomas Edison says that when his mother passed away, he went to her house to collect, everything, and he found a piece of paper in an envelope, and he read that piece of paper and he started crying. And the people around him said, well, what's going on? What happened? So he shows them the piece of paper. It was a note from the teacher. And he remembered that he got that note from the teacher, and the teacher signed it in an envelope and asked him not to open it, but give it to his parents. And he remembered that when he gave it to his mother, she opened up the note and she started reading. And she says, Dear Mrs. Edison, we are sorry to tell you that your son Thomas is actually very talented, and unfortunately we don't have the tools to teach him any longer in the school because he's very talented and he has no longer what to do in our school. We urge you to find him a new framework, a new school for him to develop his talents and to go further. And he remembered being very excited when his mother read him that note, and obviously that led him to research more and to do more and to act more, and obviously he got to where he is. But when reading the note now, he realized that the note read completely different. The note said that, Dear Mrs. Edison, your son is wild and he's disturbing the classroom and he doesn't want to study, and we've tried several times to discipline him, but it doesn't go well, so I urge you to find another school and don't send your kid to our school any longer because we will not take him back. That's that's what the note said. So that's why he cried after she died. He cried because that's what she read. That's what she read from the note, and that's led him to this, by the way, is a picture for Wikipedia of him as a child. I hope they have ways to confirm it. So this is what the Rebbe explains with regards to Hillel and Shamai. This is from Likutei Sichot. The above is to explain Shamai's statement, receive every man with a pleasant countenance. Although, from what we find in the Talmud, it seems that not always be the case. The answer is that indeed, after Hillel's words, Shamai also changed his approach and said the above statement. This is why the words of Hillel are quoted first in Tractate Avot, while everywhere else, like Ezra said, the Talmud would always quote Shamai first, and only then it would quote Hillel. But in Pirkei Avot, notice this pattern. All over Pirkei Avot, Hillel is always before Shamai, because Shamai had to listen to what Hillel said, and he consented, he complied. He said, you know what? I think you're right. I think we should be pleasant to every individual. Although all these stories appear to be a contradiction to that, yet that statement came later. That statement came as a result of Shammai understanding what Hillel says. And we find a very interesting example about positive words and positive thinking. And we know the story of Noach in the ark. We know the first famous verse, Ele Toldot Noach. These are the generations of Noach. Noach was a righteous man. He was perfect in his generation. Noach walked with God. Look at these words. Perfect in his generation. Tzaddik Tamim B'dorotav. And we know, of course, what Rashi brings on the spot. Perfect. Some of the sages interpret the word perfect favorably. That how much more so if he was in the generation of Abraham. Others interpret it the other way. In comparison with the generation, he was righteous. But if he was in Abraham's generation, he would not have been considered of any importance. And that's very interesting that the Torah has many righteous people, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, all these people, but none of them receives this amount of pleasure, this amount of good words, righteous, perfect. Nobody gets those titles anywhere, and of course after Rashi brings, we understand Noah was not really perfect. He was obviously a good man and he did everything that was required from him, but according to what Rashi brings from some of our sages, he could have done much more. He wasn't actively trying to bring his generation to repentance. So what is it so? So the Rebbe explains something phenomenal. I read it, I remember, it's crazy. He says like this, in fact, what the Torah is actually doing is turning Noah into a righteous person. Noah did not have what it takes to be a righteous and a perfect man. But the Torah is calling him like that because it wants to arouse his positive energy. It wants to make him righteous and perfect in order to accomplish his task in this generation, to be the sole survivor of the world with his family, because the world went completely crazy and God had decided to destroy the world once again and rebuild it from Noah. Noah needed special strength to withstand those challenges, to be the only one to survive with his family. He had to be righteous. The Torah calls him righteous, perfect, and there's a few other verses I didn't quote. It says, I've seen you righteous in front of me in this generation. A few other times where the Torah refers to Noah as righteous. And the reason is because Noah had to stand through a very, very serious challenge. And the Torah was making him righteous. It was giving him the strength that it needed, that Noah needed, in order to withstand those challenges, in order to make it work. So this really shows us the power of positive thinking and positive words. Torah taking someone who wasn't precisely as righteous as you would expect, but calls him righteous and perfect in order to make him righteous and perfect. And as we know, this actually helped. And there's a letter they ever write to parents who their daughter was going around with someone that not exactly a great guy, so to speak. He wasn't exactly the great guy. So the mother writes a letter to the Rebbe, how to separate my daughter from this guy, what to do now. So he writes to her back. Based on what you write, it seems there is very little you could do to change the current situation. I would advise you to act in such a way that your daughter would feel that home is always open for her and always inviting. And even more so, her parents and loved ones will always be there for her to support and to encourage, and of course to help her in the time of need, to help in the time of need. The Rebbe says, instead of fighting with your daughter, what you need to do with this current state is to give your daughter a home to come back to. Because you think she's doing a dreadful mistake. You think she's going against you. Everything you taught her, everything you educated for, everything you put into her is it's broken to pieces. What are you going to do now? So a lot of people will become aggressive. Don't come here. I don't want you to, until you live this man, I don't want you to come here. I don't want anything to do with you. Putting sanctions, right? Almost as sanctions until you change your ways, or until, the Rebbe says what this girl needs now, most of everything, is support. She needs to know there's a home. She needs to know their parents and their loved ones that care for her, that love her, that in case something goes wrong, they're just waiting for her to embrace her with open arms. That's what she needs. That is the only thing you could do in this situation, in this scenario, to help her. And not to help yourself, but to really, if you really think if her favor is in your mind, that's the course of action that you need to take. On another letter, the Rebbe writes to parents about helping a child, and he says as follows. I would like to add one more thing, which is also brought down in several of the Hasidic books. When reprimanding a child, the teacher and the parent should make sure not to arouse in the child a sense of helplessness or despair, heavens forbid. The child should never have an impression that he or she are incapable and hopeless. This might be a slippery slope with no control. Quite the contrary, the child should be encouraged and said to numerous times he or she are capable and possess the ability and the willpower to overcome every obstacle and grow stronger thereby. So if you want to help your child, instead of saying, oh, you're such a useless and such, and unfortunately this is a very common mistake what parents do with their children, there is speak positively. Say to the child, this is not who you are. These bad grades and this bad behavior is not who you are. I know you're much better than that. I know you could do much more than that. I know that this is just something silly, that might have happened, but you're not an idiot, you're not stupid, you're not that. If you say these words to a child, the stupid idiot, it brings them down, and then there's no way that they will be able to come out of that situation. So obviously this is what Hillel taught Shamai. So We say Hillel said something, Shamai said something. We find Shamai to be actually straight in the line with Hillel because he realized that in fact Hillel was right. And although being rigorous and being strict and being stringent, he realized that with regards to other people, he should accept everyone and should treat them in a way that would bring about their good parts as opposed to their negative parts. And anyway, there's a few more stories, but it's getting late and I hear already, if you heard some sounds, that I might be needed upstairs to help. Next week on Tuesday is actually Israel Memorial Day for the soldiers. So there's a little ceremony that takes place in the ambassador's house. So this is all in Hebrew. So I don't know who got an invitation, who didn't get an invitation. It's all in Hebrew, so maybe they're not thinking of inviting who's not Israeli. But anyway, I have to be there. I have to say the prayers on Tuesday, and that happens on Tuesday night. So our weekly class, Monday, Wednesday, which one is, do you guys have any preference? You still have that Monday class that you do, or you're free on Monday?
No, I'm free. It's same for me.
Yeah. So, and Marie, Monday, Wednesday, they're the same?